Of all the content on the ePortfolio, you probably wouldn't think about research as something that elicited an emotional response. But as I think about why the KU program has been so helpful to me, I can't help but realize that one of those many reasons is that each course and so much of the content within each course has been based on solid research, and that so many of the professors and lecturers who guided us through these courses were just a wealth of knowledge on research and research-based strategies in their content area. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to include it in the portfolio, to show that I take that seriously and that I understand research and that I can demonstrate how my understanding of research has grown throughout the program. The link there is that I also want to be that kind of teacher, knowledgeable about research and research-based strategies, both for my own students and for colleagues at the school where I'm working. The implications for special education teachers here are that we have both a legal responsibility and I think an ethical one to be using the most effective strategies in order to help our students close the achievement gaps that they have. The best way that we know to do that is by using evidence-based practices and research-based strategies. And so I think that as we move nationally toward more inclusive practices, special education teachers are also going to play an incredible role in helping general education teachers implement those. So as I look back 2 years before I entered the KU program, I was pretty ignorant to research-based strategies. In fact, on some level, I think I resisted them partly because I perceived them as an attack on my teacher autonomy. I didn't understand the way we match those up, and that so many have autonomy built in or allow for autonomy as part of the teaching process. I think that's also important to admit as I think about helping other teachers who might have the same misconceptions that I had. We need to secure that buy-in and relieve that anxiety about research-based strategies even before we begin to share them with other teachers. Now I can talk with colleagues about the process of selecting a research-based strategy based on a student's need, not that we look at a strategy and say, how do we implement that, or who can we implement it with, but it starts the other way around. We look at a student's need and think about if there's a strategy out there that would support that student's need, and how to implement various strategies with fidelity. I can share various resources for locating research-based strategies in different areas, and I can share with colleagues some ways that we would look at data and collect data to determine whether those strategies are working with those students. So up until now, the strategies that I know and that are in play in my classroom have come from this program almost without exception. But I'm about to graduate, which means if I'm going to continue learning about these, I had better understand the research that supports them, because as various professors pointed out, there are imposter strategies where the research supporting them might not be as high quality as it takes to call those research-based strategies, and I need to be able to differentiate, and I certainly don't want to share those imposter strategies with colleagues at my school. So in order to do that, after I graduate, I need to be knowledgeable about how to tell whether a study is high quality or maybe not so much. In looking at the reliability of this study as part of this assignment, it drew upon much of the knowledge from the the earlier weeks in the course in terms of thinking about the data itself, the student population. Did it generalize to other students? Let's look at the sampling method, the sample size, and a variety of other factors. And I would go through that same process, and then you have to form a judgment based on that. The phrase that I liked from this course is that we have to make a judgment about whether the research convinced us, and that's its job, is to convince us. We can't just take research for granted and say, well, there's research on it, it must be true. Regarding the effects at the school and classroom level, the first thing I thought about was that this assignment really reinforced the concepts or the principles of the universal design for learning. The article at hand here talked about testing, and I couldn't help but think of all of the different ways there were to assess. And another connection I made is to the curriculum course. I wrote a paper on thinking about technology, not as something that enhances or generates interest in the curriculum, but as a part of the curriculum itself, using Sleeter and Stillman's weakening classifications and frames. And if we're going to continue to put so much emphasis on high-stakes testing, it's only fair to think about those tests as part of the curriculum, including test-taking strategies, ways to alleviate anxiety, and if we're not prepared to think about that as part of the curriculum, maybe we need to think about high-stakes testing in general. Collaboration. So I've been able to share many of these strategies with colleagues at the school, and I'm learning from them too. Many of their successes that they share might eventually become or be known as research-based strategies or even evidence-based practices. And so there's an absolutely a give and take there. As much as I share, I want to learn from them. The final thing I think is important to think about is that this process has taken years, and I think it's important that if we're going to share research-based strategies, for instance, I'm not at a point where I'm sharing how to analyze the research itself with any of my colleagues. We're just talking about the strategies themselves, how to match them up with a student need, and different resources for finding them. So it takes a lot of time. It has taken me years, and when we're working with other teachers regarding these, I think that's important to remember and to let them know up front that this is a process of learning about research-based strategies. I just want to end by expressing my thankfulness, not only for this course and this assignment, allowing me the opportunity to share some portion of what I know about research, but also that in thinking about graduation gifts, I mentioned to my family that it might be fun to get some journal articles, subscriptions to journal articles, so I can continue to read research after graduation.